name is Brittany Boston, and I am with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support, or ICSPS as we call it. And joining me today for this session is our director, Amy Julian. So I will let her introduce herself as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amy Julian. I'm the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. And we're excited to be here today to talk to you about recruitment and engagement strategies, tips, and tricks.
Yes. So what can we expect for today? You got an hour with us. Kind of what are we going to be talking about today? So we're going to be looking at some evidence-based practices. We're going to be talking about strategies and tips focused on recruitment and engagement. So we just kind of want you to follow along, hopefully get some valuable information from this. And like I mentioned before, Amy and I, especially when we're doing sessions like this, are rather informal. So if you have a question or a comment, you can always put it in the chat. I've got my chat open, monitoring that. Or do not be afraid to interrupt us and say, hey, you said this thing. Can you expand a little bit more on that? Or, hey, Amy, you're talking too fast. Can you slow down a little bit? We will not take offense to any interruptions whatsoever. All right, so let's jump in and talk about some tips for recruiting. So, when we're talking about recruiting students into programs, whether it's non-credit, whether it's the community college as a whole, right? Depending on your role, there needs to be some excitement there from you as well, right? And I know, having worked with the non-credit group for some time now and being a part of the conference, you all are really excited about the work that you do, and it comes through. And I think that's a key piece when you're getting sort of students or potential students interested, is expressing that excitement as well, right? And looking at things in a different way, and what is non-credit and how can that be beneficial to the current or potential students and where they can see growth. I think a lot of it is just sharing information that people may not be aware of. Um, there's that quote on there of, if nothing changes, then nothing changes, right? And so if we're not being our own sort of spokespeople and cheerleaders, if you will, for the work that you all are doing, then nobody else is going to, right? Unfortunately. And so making sure that we are starting off with that level of excitement and joy that I know you all have, and sharing that information with potential students and partners that you're working with. Okay, so jumping into some evidence-based practices here, or EBP, because of course we can't go through any sort of presentation without more acronyms, right? So when we're talking about recruiting students, we want to make sure that we are addressing those stereotypes, those assumptions that can be held by instructors, they can be held by parents or guardians, and even potential students. Maybe they don't see themselves in a certain role, or maybe they don't even see themselves as a potential student because, well, I don't have time, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the skill set for it. And so making sure that we are raising awareness of our program opportunities early on in that recruitment process, and sharing, I think something that I hear continually in the non-credit field, both, during these learning communities and at the conferences, is people within your community or your organization not really knowing what non-credit is or the benefit to that. And I know that it can probably be tiresome having to be the one to constantly be like, hey, we're over here. This is what we're doing. This is how amazing we are. But no one else is going to speak your praises if you don't also speak your praises. And so starting off with, here is what non-credit is, here is what non-credit isn't, and making sure that the folks that are kind of those first touch points for students are aware of that. Marketing is a great tool, especially if we're looking at imagery. But one of the key pieces when it comes to marketing and using pictures, if you are including students in those pictures, making sure that they're actually students that you have on campus. Stock images are great, but people can tell when it's a stock image photo. Are the students actually working? Are they in class? Are they learning? Showing them active within the program. And then including pictures with individuals, right, sort of in that same context. So we talked about reducing those stereotypes, showing their personality, really making it a real life situation. And then creating relationships with employers, right? We know that that's key there. Providing accurate information, facilitating contact with potential speakers and resources, building those partnerships. I feel like we put relationships there, but partnerships is really key with employers, and making sure that they are also a part of the work that we are doing, right? Because we want that path to really flow. Okay. And we kind of touched on this a little bit, but again, when we're talking about, the imagery or the face that we're putting out there, making sure that we're inclusive. We're representing all possible students, whether that's on our website, whether that's on printed materials. If a student can't see themselves in an environment, then they will be less inclined to reach out and ask questions about that program. If they already have that hesitation of thinking that they aren't capable or it's not for them. So making sure that when we're using the imagery, that we're inclusive of all students. And then please feel free as we're going throughout, if you have any questions or comments, you can come off mute, you can type in the chat, whatever works best for you. And then looking at those services and recruitment campaigns, and some of this might be a little along the same lines of what was mentioned before, but really making sure that we are drawing students in, right? And not sort of singling them out, really building that community mindset from the very beginning. Using common language, we know that if we are at a conference or filling out a report or doing some type of training, we talk a lot in acronyms, as I mentioned. There's a lot of professional bureaucratic terminology that has to be used when we're filling out reports or communicating within our own institution. But when we're promoting our programs or talking to students, using that common language that they understand and that they know, that maybe non-credit is not one that's familiar to them. Or I know when we do work with career and technical education, there's conversations about special population learners. Students may not even know what that means. And so making sure that we are stepping outside of the bureaucratic language and really giving more meaning to it for students or potential students. And then using multiple forms of media to market. We'll talk about more in-depth kind of websites, but the website really is that front door, they like to say, of your institution. A lot of times, Google searches will lead people to your website. And so what does that look like? How many clicks does it take for them to get to certain areas on your website? Is there a search bar? So making sure that we're paying attention to our online marketing tools as well as our printed tools, and also where we're placing those. Are we printing out handouts and flyers and putting them within our local community with some of our partners that are sharing them out? where and how are those resources being distributed? And then battling assumptions, again, making sure that we're not pigeonholing people without even realizing it, right? Um, showing marketing for, the example here is for nursing and all of the students are women, or for welding and all of the students shown are men, trying to be as diverse in our marketing as we are able to be. And then word of mouth, which we'll talk a little bit more here in a bit, but hear from previous graduates, previous students, previous learners, get their testimonials, get their success stories, how the program has benefited them, what they learned, some hurdles that they overcame along the way and how they did that. I think, and Amy, we can go ahead and go to the next slide because I'm just going to roll right into it. But word of mouth is probably your largest marketing tool. I was in a meeting the other day with some adult education individuals, and the individual said it beautifully of like, I can tell people what adult ed is over and over again, but the reality is my two students who completed the program are going to go off and they're going to tell two of their friends who are going to tell two of their friends. And hearing the success stories and the benefits that students have experienced from the program really is your golden ticket when it comes to marketing and recruiting new individuals. Okay, and so this is kind of the same thing. So we're gonna roll right into there. Leveraging new technology. So find out what works for your team and your program. I think the slide before that talked about some social media. So we know we have programs who they really lean into social media. They lean into TikTok and Instagram. But we also know that that's not for everyone, and some institutions don't use social media. But if that is a route you want to take, that could even be something that current students could assist with as a project or a class assignment. Really helping looking at that, how do we market through social media? How do we reach students outside of just the typical text message or email? And starting small, but starting somewhere, right? So whether it's with social media or your website or hard copy marketing resources, but we're kind of naming them all, but this isn't a you have to do all of it. Just starting somewhere and taking the steps to make sure that we're utilizing the technology for our benefit. And then again, engage with potential and current students. Um, those current students are a great source of information about, what's been working for them in the program. Where can we make changes? Where can we step up our game? How did they hear about the program? Right? When you have students that have come in, asking them those questions of, hey, how did you hear about this program? What sort of pieces, whether it was the marketing tools or another student, were they notified of the possibilities for them? And following up with students, right? Especially students who express interest. I think you all know as well as anybody that if you have a student who has taken the time and effort to reach out to, whether they went through a Google search or came across your website or heard from a friend of like, hey, you should really go, to SWIC and check out this program. And then they make the effort to do so and there's no follow-up, it's you they're not going to try again, right? Unless they are really truly interested. But most of the time we get maybe one, maybe two chances to continue to encourage that interest and get them in the door. So, emailing students from last spring, following up with them, calling or texting to check in. I know we now have so many text platforms or apps that you can use with automated messages. And those automated messages can be helpful, right? They can, because you all have lots on your plate. And so making sure to send a text message to 10 students may fall off, but also making them personalized as well. And then following up with folks on social media. If your institution or program has a social media account, I think reaching out to individuals on social media is acceptable as well, because I mean, nowadays, a lot of people, that's how they communicate. They don't really communicate with phone calls and text messages. They communicate via social media. So it's leaning into that new technology as we mentioned earlier. All right, so we had talked about your web page, the web page being your gateway or front door, I think I called it, to your program. So we'll go to the next slide and just some things to keep in mind. And now I say this knowing that more than likely, probably none of you on this call man your web page, right? You don't oversee it. It's probably IT or someone within your institution. But being sure that it is a friendly website, right? It's accessible, it's intuitive, it's easy to navigate. And especially when we're talking about potential students, is the information that they are likely to be looking for easy to find for them? Is it a mobile friendly website? Again, we tend to be on our phones more than we are on our laptops. So is it accessible on a phone, on a tablet? Does it load quickly? Our attention spans, thanks to social media, have gotten so much shorter than they already are. So if it takes a minute to load, there's going to be frustration, and then they're probably moving on to the next. So making sure it's accessible and loading quickly, easy to navigate, organized. Having individuals go through, again, maybe these are current students right now, and getting their feedback on, did you find us through the website? Did you look at our website? Are you even aware that we have a website? And if you were to utilize it, what types of things are you looking for? What information are you wanting? What types of services would be great to kind of have just right there? And then compatible with popular browsers. That's one that can sometimes be frustrating. I know some browsers have kind of seen their way out, but Google Chrome and Firefox tend to typically be the more popular ones. But who knows 10 years from now, 5 years from now, if that will still be the case. So just making sure that we're staying abreast of what those popular browsers are, and that our website works with those. And then we talked about social media, right? Does your program have a social media presence? If that's not something that you're comfortable with, is there someone on your team? Is there a student that would love to kind of take it over and run with it? Are there other programs within your institution that are utilizing social media that you could reach out to and say, hey, we've seen you on Instagram, we've seen you on TikTok. How are you framing these things? How are you coming up with these ideas for reels? Have you seen it make a difference in the audience that you're touching and the students that you are gaining from this? And then I'm going to go ahead and we'll pause for questions. And then if there's any questions or comments, we can address those now. And then I'm going to hand it over to Amy.
Give you all a minute. Any questions? I will say the one caveat or important note with your web browser is when they run an update, be sure your website still looks the way it's supposed to look, because Chrome is notorious for having random updates, and we are all to adhere to the ADA compatibility and accessibility laws that go into effect this month. But just be mindful of that. Like check it out when you go in and see Chrome. Be like, oh, I need to look at my website as well. All right, I'm not seeing any questions popping up, so we're going to just keep plugging along. Does that sound good to everybody? Fabulous. Okay, so there are 3 E's to successful recruiting: engage, equip, and empower. You want to give your fans, your students, your potential students, the gift of you. So engage with them, listen to what they're telling you, be a part of the conversation about your program, your brand, your college. Be present. So when they reach out to you, be responsive. Find a way to be responsive to those texts or those social media communications back and forth, because you want to be sure that if they are engaging with you, that you're engaging back. Equip is that give them a reason to talk. It can be an amazing product. It can be a great service. It can be something that you know about, some insider knowledge. This program is going to come out. We have a new program that we're developing, social elevation, success stories, as Brittany's talked about, word of mouth. So incredible stories, unbelievable facts about your program, or even funny disclosures or business relationships, things of that nature. But equip them with something that they can talk about and they can talk to you about, because that's very important. And then empower is really exactly what it says. Give your students ways to talk and share. Create those hashtags on social media, allow them to share the success. Have those cohorts or LinkedIn pages where you can have people build off of your success and share out what you're doing. In that idea of you're doing them a favor and engaging with them. So ensure there's a clear place to get answers. This is really important for not only retention, but also engagement. So when your students come into your website or come into your program, where do they go to find answers? Who do they go to? And I know in working with a lot of the programs in the colleges, they're like, oh, well, we always go to Billy because Billy's fantastic and she knows everything that's going on. Well, that's great, but do the students know that? Do people outside of your internal network know that? So make sure that that's clear, and make sure that's clear not only on your website, but also in your marketing and how you're reaching out with students. And now we're going to shift a little bit to, now that you have them, how do you keep them? So there's some engagement strategies. And again, just a slide on student engagement. So to find out why, to talk about engagement, we also want to talk about why they leave. So when you have students leaving, they're usually leaving for financial challenges. They're leaving for poor academic performance. They have a lack of engagement and belonging. There's a huge study, and have been multiple studies since American Institute and Research did these, and also so did the League of Innovation, on why students leave. And it's that lack of belonging. If students feel that they belong at your organization, if they feel that somebody cares at your organization, they are more likely to retain, stay, or be engaged. That fourth thing there is unclear expectations. So the student felt they were doing well and then found out that they weren't, or they thought they were not doing well and found out that they were. But unclear expectations is this reason why students would leave a program. And then poor time management skills. They feel overwhelmed. There has been a recent study talking about brain engagement for the Zoomers that are all in our student classes right now, and how their brains have not had the ability to rest and recoup the same way that, say, the Generation X or even the millennials have. And so they run into fatigue and anxiety much more susceptible to that, because they don't have time management. They don't put their phone down and step away. They're in that constant intake of getting information from their phones or their social media. And so helping us teach them time management skills is essential to not only our program success, but also their independent success. They will stay if they feel they belong and you are invested in them. And as I said, there is a whole body of research on this particular statement. And the involvement involves the whole campus community and the engagement strategy. So whatever you're doing to help your students become engaged, share that out. Sing your successes, to what Brittany was saying earlier. No one's going to come in and praise your work. So stand tall, sing loud, sing proud, and talk about the fantastic things that you're doing. Some engagement strategies there: emphasize student support services. Community colleges are beacons of student support. You all have fantastic student support available to you, and I know you all know that. So emphasize that to your students, because that's one of the calling cards of the community college system. Personalized proactive advising, highlight academic mentors, coaches, and advisors. Let them know that body of individuals who are there to support them. Let them know their network that they're forming by attending your program, engaging with your coursework, and being part of your community. Flexible strategies, initiate programs that cater to your students' lifestyles, including hybrid or flexible courses options that help students attend while juggling work and travel. In the non-credit space, there is a lot of balancing, a lot of time management, a lot of, I want to do this, but I also have these commitments. So flexible scheduling is essential for our program success. And then one-on-one student messaging and academic supports are highly desirable for students, regardless of age, personal background, or income level. And you can do this through geofencing your social media, or do this through text messaging, or any kind of mass messaging can also be customized to the individual student, allowing them to feel that they are more seen, and then they will engage and retain. So when we talk about boosting your community engagement, there are some great studies around cohorts, study groups, and student organizations, and really allowing those students to have space where they, as Brittany said earlier, see themselves, but also see how they fit within your organization. So if you don't have cohorts, study groups, student organizations, it is a great way to really build those. And when we look at ways to build those, there are opportunities for peer mentoring programs, virtual tutoring centers, holistic wellness programs, data-driven advising, and then work integration with learning. I'm not going to read you all of these that are on the screen, but I will tell you that that idea of peer mentoring programs is highly renowned and also just a really great way to engage with your students, have your students, again, that word of mouth, singing their own successes. And then looking at, we have a lot of focus on mental health resources, counseling services, looking at their emotional well-being alongside their academic journey. As I said, our students often struggle with anxiety and struggle with balancing their schedules. So ways in which we can assist them with through holistic wellness programs will be beneficial not only to ourselves, but also to our students. And then that engagement with business, partnering with local business and enterprise organizations to create internships, hands-on experiences, work-based learning, all of those things that really bridge that gap between what is learned in the classroom and how they're going to apply that in the real world. And non-credit probably does that better. I don't want to say than anybody, because the CTE folks might come after me, but they do it, if not as well, equally as well to career and tech ed, who really spend a lot of time in that work integration and work-based learning. Also, things that will keep your students engaged are wraparound services. So when we look at barriers for students and we look at what are those barriers that they're encountering that are leading to either withdrawal from an institution or a program, many times they fall in these areas. So you have transportation, food insecurity, childcare, and then centralized resources. So what can you do as a program or as an institution to address those is find ways to provide reliable transportation, rideshare coordinations, shuttle services, things of that nature. Depending on where you are in the state does depend on what your access is to transportation support. And I'm going to use Parkland for an example. So they're over in Champaign. They have a fantastic bus system that goes all over Champaign, which also comes out to Parkland. So it's fantastic for them. If you are down at Rend Lake, you don't quite have the fantastic bus service that's the same way that it's done in Champaign. And so you might need to look at ride shares or other mechanisms. I know there's also a shuttle at Rend Lake that does a great job with that. Chicago, all of you have a whole different series of transportation support. And I know that many of your colleges do allow for passes for public transportation in Chicago. So that's fantastic. And that kind of reduces that barrier. The next one there plagues all kinds of our students. There's no badge or special program or any kind of, green beanie that they put on, but students having access to food banks, meal vouchers, partnership with community kitchens across your community really will help with this. The colleges have done an outstanding job in programs have done a real wonderful job of really looking at how they can support students who are experiencing hunger, or also known as food insecurity. And so if you don't have a community kitchen, or if you don't have a food bank or some place on campus, consider starting that up. Many of the colleges do have those services, and they're really very beneficial to students. Third point there is overwhelmingly, especially since the pandemic, an issue for many of the individuals across the country, not only those who engage with the community college system, but also just across the whole population. Affordable, accessible childcare that is dependable is unfortunately in short supply. So if your institution has a childcare program, fantastic. Be sure your students know about it. If they don't, are there individuals in the community that offer childcare? How do we put the students who need childcare services in contact with those entities? And really bridging that gap to allow people to be able to drop their children at some place that they feel is safe, and then be able to focus. As a working mom, I will tell you that you are not able to focus if you do not think your child is in a safe place and doing well. It's a huge distraction to your success in the workplace, in your program, in your course, and any of those things. And then this last bullet is really one of those things that's the low-hanging fruit. This is something that's easy to do. Create a single, easy to navigate hub that connects your students to your academic, financial, wellness, support services, anything that you have to reduce barriers. Find a way, and this can be done through your website or through a promotional material or an app. There's a million different ways that all of you at different colleges are doing this, but allow the students to see everything that they have access to in one spot. The idea of being on a campus, and I'm going to go talk to Anne, and then I'm going to go talk to Melissa, and then I'm going to go talk to Valerie, and I'm going to move around campus and see all the different things that are available to me, is really pretty 20th century. And so we want to move into the 21st century where we allow the students to see where those resources are all housed. They still might have to move around campus. That's fine. That's not an issue. But they need to see what's all available to them, because if they don't, then they're usually missing something that is really key to their success. All right, I've laid a lot out there for you. Any questions on any of the topics that we've covered? I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you have one or more of these wraparound services on campus? Raise your virtual hands.
We do, Amy. Let me put my camera on. I've got some colleagues here who are also logged in as me, so it looks like there's three Billies today, but there's just me and two friends. We have some of these, and we find that it's not always easy for CE students to tap into them. So although a Harper student is a Harper student, and that's the language that we preach.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not always extended to non-credit students the same way it is to the folks on the credit side.
Interesting. And one of the things I know we've run into this when we support the adult education space, having those conversations with administration and allowing those barriers to be reduced. So the non-credit student is seen as, again, the Harper student is the Harper student. That is what they preach. That is what many of your institutions preach. So looking at what are those barriers and why they exist, and then looking at ways to dismantle, move around, work on those barriers is something that will be successful.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, at Heartland, our classes, our C classes are priced fairly expensively. I mean, we have a robust park district system here that does stuff a lot less expensively. So, I mean, it's kind of understood with our CE classes, we're targeting a demographic that really doesn't worry too much about transportation support or things like that. Childcare would be nice to have. That is something that I think I would love to extend to not only our students, but also to our instructors. Sometimes we have instructors who can't teach in the evening because they need childcare. That would be definitely good to have. But again, our price point is just, it kind of filters out. And I really wish we could offer, I mean, I'd love to have scholarships for seniors. One of our registration people said they get senior citizens calling in who would love to take our courses, but they're in a limited income, and that would be lovely. A transportation and scholarship for to show that you are a continual learner. We value you as a continual learner. So anyway, sorry.
No, and thank you for sharing, and Billy, thank you for sharing. I do think that that's an area that it is worth colleges pursuing, possibly looking. I know there used to, and I'm going to say it that way, there was a Department of Aging that did offer scholarships, and then for a long time, Senior Corps, which was part of the National Coalition on Volunteerism, that AmeriCorps branch, they had funds that were available for seniors and individuals to, work on continuing ed.
Yeah.
That was part of that. Unfortunately, I'm aware that both of those programs are kind of very depleted at this time.
Yeah.
But maybe looking for a business to help with that. Like, would you be interested, Rivian, since they're in your back door, offsetting?
I mean, I think that's a great idea. I do know, especially with Rivian's, I think already one of our bigger donors, we would definitely have to go through a foundation and be very careful we're not stepping on toes.
Right.
It would be the start of a huge process. And I think we all know too, I mean, there's really no downtime for us. There's a lot of stuff we'd love to do, but if we're not actively caretaking classes right now or wrapping up from the previous semester or planning the future, there's not really a good like 2 weeks to just work on a project. That's one of the things that I found in this job. There's never a downtime really. There's never a, well, when things calm down, I can do this.
No, and I completely understand that, and I do sympathize and empathize with that. I also challenge all of you to think about maybe not, because I did say Rivian, but maybe not the big employer,
Right.
maybe somebody who is more small and local who benefits from seniors, knowing that they're supporting them.
Yeah.
Food establishments, things of that nature might be an avenue to look at. And then again, if you don't have a childcare program at your institution, and I know a few do and a few don't, it really is great for not only the students who are in early childhood or children development or any of those courses to have a place to get their credit hours or their work-based learning experience, but also for your employees to have an opportunity to drop their children under someplace that is very close to where they're working and being able to have that flexible schedule. Anything else resonate with individuals on the call? Thank you, Anne and Billy, for sharing. And I apologize for being off camera today. I look like a Rudolph because of the lovely swing in temperatures, and my allergies are driving me crazy. Anything that you're doing that didn't make the list that you think we should highlight? Any amazing practices? We just got done telling you you need to sing and shout your own praises out.
I'd also be curious to know if any of you have ventured into the world of social media, and marketing in that way, or if there are other programs or entities within your institutions that have been utilizing social media, and if that's something that maybe you've been pondering about.
How do you mean, like us classes in them, or like marketing our classes via it?
Marketing your classes via that. Yeah. So we've had several programs who have really just kind of dove in headfirst with social media and creating reels and doing all of the things.
We have here at Heartland, we have a marketing person dedicated to dealing mostly with us, who also handles our booklets. And then we have a contact in the marketing department who handles our social media. Ours is pretty much Facebook focused, especially for our adult classes because that just seems to be where the demographic is. Heartland in general has an Instagram account, but Heartland and CE doesn't. But occasionally we're featured on there occasionally. We also ask and we make it very clear with our instructors when we hire them. It's not exactly an expectation, but please market your own class. It's to everyone's benefit. So let people know. So my macrame person has a very good Instagram presence, and he markets his classes. We find people just kind of follow an instructor. People take dance classes. So we put a lot of the onus for, I guess, more newfangled social media on the instructor, but they know that going in. So
Yeah. Excellent. Anyone else using social media to market your programming? Thank you, Anne, for sharing.
We do too, but our marketing department hasn't really put in the emphasis on social media as much as like our print catalog and postcards and things like that. So if we're gonna post, it's me. So I have a Harper College Community Education LinkedIn page that I'll post things on, and then I'll share them on my personal page because I have a lot more followers than the CE page. And I've had a student or two over the years that said, I heard about this on LinkedIn. We also do a little bit of Facebook and Instagram, but I can't say that I've gotten any like specific career training students that have said that they heard about us from Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, and I think too, I think it was Anne made the comment of whatever newfangled social media account is out there, right? I think that's also hard to keep track of what the new social media app is, right? And staying, it's almost like you have to play all of the roles, right? You have to be, know what's going on the academic side, but also be cool and hip and up with all of the new technology. So yeah, just one more hat to wear, right? It's fine.
yep.
And I was going to say, I think that also these lovely engagement strategies, especially this holistic wellness, take a minute and reflect on that for yourself too, not only for your students and taking that time, because yes, you are in a position where, and we just got done telling you, like, not only do you need to be the marketing person, but you also need to be the retention person. You also need to be doing all these lovely things, which we want to equip you with some tools to do that. But at the same time, that is a lot to balance. And you are kind of like a small business running within an institution and marketing all these wonderful courses for your community within your institution. So finding ways to really get the word out. If you can piggyback on additional resources, do so, but also don't forget your own wellness as you go through that. And thank you, Anne, for posting the page, the Facebook page in chat. Anyone else like to share? Any other thoughts before we wrap up here today? I'll get us back to the end. Sorry, I went back to the social media page. So I'll let Alex know, I'm going to put him on the spot and ask him if there's anything from ICCB. But before I do that, I put our website here at the bottom. I will also throw that in the chat. We have some fantastic resources on recruitment, on engagement, on retention. There's all kinds of fun strategies there. We also, I'd like to highlight, just wrapped up a community mapping project. And if the internet here will allow me, I'm going to show you that page. My computer's basically like, how many windows can you have open? Because what we did was we talked with 7 different colleges across Illinois about what were some of the barriers that they encountered. And again, this really does tie in with the work we're doing here. And they said, well, a lot of the things that we just mentioned. So if you go to our website, here we go. Take on a little tour. The community mapping work, we have a framework, we have a report, but we really look at solutions that are being implemented, media blitz, intakes forms, campus tours, centralized resources, and really looking at the way in which you engage with students. And what we did was we worked with 7 colleges across Illinois to look at what their community offered and then how they were supporting students in addressing barriers such as transportation, childcare, food insecurity, and housing. So just that little resource, I'll throw that in the chat as well. And with that, Alex, do we have anything from ICCB that we'd like to share?
Here, I'll turn my camera on. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Brittany, for today. You can kind of see me there. One thing I just wanted to highlight, and we've highlighted this in multiple operational meetings, just how important and how critical sometimes wraparound support services can be for students. And I just want to let everybody know that through the install grant, wraparound supports are an allowable expense. And we've seen that a number of colleges have utilized their funds in a number of ways, whether it's creating scholarships for students, whether it's providing food assistance, transportation assistance. So I really just wanted to highlight that point, because breaking down those barriers to make sure that students can show up for courses, right? And be there, be present, and learn as much as they can is a really important thing. So I just want to highlight that real quick. And once again, just thank you for Brittany and Amy for hosting today's learning community. So
thank you, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
And any questions for Alex? Because we talked about those wraparound services of transportation, food banks, food insecurity, childcare, and centralized resources. Anything for Alex about?
It's kind of our wheelhouse, yeah.
Wheelhouse, what we want to support or how you can go about supporting those things.